Make life easy. All right.
Get yourself situated, Chris, and begin.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is a meeting of the Village of South Russell Finance Committee on the 5th of July. No, it's not the 5th of July. It is the 6th of July, 2022. Present for the meeting today in person is the Chair of the Finance Committee, Councilman Galicki, the Assistant of the Finance Committee, Councilman Berger, the Fiscal Officer, Danielle Romanowski. Joining us, I understand, remotely may be the Mayor. But I also understand that the Fiscal Auditor may not have a good connection.
He's not.
He's out on a boat today. So, in any event, we'll commence the meeting at 10:37 today. And agenda items include the following: fiscal auditor position, tax budget, reserve funds, OP&F, and investments. So the first item of business on the agenda is the fiscal auditor position. To begin with, I will state that the fiscal auditor position is not a required position under the Ohio Revised Code for a municipality. It is an optional position. And I understand that Councilman Berger really wanted to have a discussion about how we want to go forward in filling, or if we fill, the fiscal auditor position. With that, I'll first turn it over to the fiscal officer for any background information, and then open the floor to discussion.
Well, I did give you a copy of the fiscal auditor's position, and then the responsibilities I highlighted in yellow is pretty much what I do, and then in blue is what the fiscal auditor and I do. So, I'm the one who gets the stuff ready for the budget, and then Adam and I both balance to the bank. So what happens is every month I give him the check register with all the checks that were cut and then all the cash revenues we received, and then he, in essence, enters them into QuickBooks and then makes sure that we balance on every fund. We have one bank account, but it's divided into all the different funds for all the different things we're required to have. Then the monthly report, Adam and I both do. I put all mine are on the electronic packets, the council packets online, and then Adam does his in person. And so that's the breakdown of what we do. And then one of the, I guess the biggest things when I started was that the fiscal auditor would make the deposits. We wanted separation of duties, but we found out deposits had to be banked daily, and the fiscal auditor, this is a part-time job. So he wasn't getting them to the bank in time, which was a problem on our audit. So now the fiscal administrative assistant does the deposits. So over the years, things have changed with technology. So the state and the county give us all our deposits, direct deposits. So we know if we just give a description of what was put in the bank and we compare it to the bank. Building department, she collects the revenues for that stuff, brings it over to Village Hall. I enter into my system, and then Leslie makes the deposit. And for the cemetery stuff, Leslie collects that money, but I have to notarize the deeds, so then you have two people who collect that money. So you kind of do have separation of duties there, unless you want to keep it in that position, and you would need somebody to take it to the bank every day. And the next one is duplicate set of books, which is kind of a duplication of work, but that's how we make sure that we have balance on all funds. The fiscal auditor is also signing on the checks. So currently it's myself and Adam, once we do it every time, and then the chair of finance is the backup. So depending on if you keep the position the same with the auditor, if not, then you could have myself as a signer, and then maybe the chair of finance, and maybe the other chair, or the other person on finance as the backup. And investments, we don't currently have investments, but we're gonna start doing it. But I'm assuming we would hire an outside investment firm such as Meteor or somebody who would advise with that. And then now that we know we have the investment board, we always thought in the past that it was just totally on Adam how to do the investments, but really we do have a board that's supposed to weigh in on that, so. So I guess the questions are, do you want to keep the fiscal auditor's job as it stands? It's currently a salaried position, with no set hours. Or do you want to make it an hourly position? Or do you want to absorb it into an administrative role? I think it's up to you how you want to do it. There's different options, so that's.
Okay, questions. So did I hear you correctly that both the fiscal officer and the fiscal auditor can sign checks?
Yes.
Well, doesn't that violate the separation of duties concept? As a business guy, I look at accounts receivable and accounts payable, and you put a brick wall between the two of them. So the money coming in is handled by one side, and the money going out is handled by the other side, so that there's separation, so you avoid the potential for short-circuiting the process. And so we really don't have a clear separation of duties from money coming into the village versus money going out of the village. If both of you can sign checks, and
It's two signatures.
it's a dual signature on every check,
Every check.
okay?
That's why we have it back. So it's Adam and I sign every check. So if Adam's out of town and I have to sign checks, I would get the chair of finance to sign.
Let me ask you a question. Dennis is the chair. Did you sign a signature card at the bank?
Yes, you did.
Oh, that's right, I did.
Okay,
I
so
I did not go to the bank.
but you signed a
But there was-
signature card.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and so every time it changes,
We have to change it.
okay, because I don't remember
No, you
doing that.
didn't do it.
I never
Because
did it.
it was like October when I realized that we didn't change signers because Mike was,
Okay.
but we never used them. Adam and I pretty much tried to get the checks done. We tried to use the.
Yeah, I've never had to
Carrier.
sign a check.
Okay,
But typically,
But
we
it's-
change that.
but it's good policy to have the backup in place
Mhm.
in the event that there's an emergency or something extraordinary.
Exactly.
Okay, but from a funds intake, from a receivable standpoint, I mean, clearly, I'm gonna assume there's not a whole lot of funds that come in other than electronically.
No, I mean, the only things basically that we get other than electronic is the building department
Right.
or cemetery. So,
Okay.
you know, the roof takes those in, Pleasant takes those in, so, but other than that,
Okay, so let's look at it as a material issue and say, we have a $3.5 million budget. And the amount of cash that comes in, either in check form or cash, that we have to transact is 1/10 of 1%?
oh, very small.
Okay, I mean, it's not a material issue.
Mhm.
Okay, so maybe from that perspective, you know, we really don't need the separation because,
Well, you know, Chris, the other side, you know, we require two signatures, I guess, on our checks,
Right.
both of the signers. I understand your point for the opportunity for fraud if either or could sign. Because that way the auditor then could issue a check and say, it's perfectly good.
yeah, exactly.
So I think with the requirement of two, that kind of mitigates.
I agree, and from an intake standpoint, it's a very small amount of money, and it's not material. Now, at the same point in time, Chagrin Falls just went through what turned out to be a material issue with their building department for, what was that, a couple $100,000? So, so I'm trying to figure out the need for the fiscal auditor. And it's not that originally I was for hiring a replacement to keep the position. But from a day-to-day standpoint, it doesn't sound like it's really needed.
Well, case in point, you're preparing your tax budget right now. Okay, huge suck up of time for you. How much assistance have you received from the auditor?
No.
None.
I see the
So
budget.
that's on yourself.
Correct.
You know, I mean, I see the job description and a lot of, good stuff in there, but when you start highlighting, who actually does what, I gotta weigh in with Chris a little bit to say, is this really something that we need? And what's the risk to the village, of course, if we eliminate this? Now, Alan or Adam's always said, we agreed to the penny. But is it that significant of an audit? I mean, once a year, for a nonprofit, say for instance, and I was executive director of a nonprofit for a while. We had an outside audit firm, that would come in once a year or once every 2 years, can take a look at the books and say, things look good, things look bad. And we did have our own bookkeeper per se.
Well, we do get audited every year.
Yeah.
I mean, from-
So, the opportunities for fraud are small.
Well, the other thing is too, so
And when you think a comment like that, that's,
when I gave you
Should
the
close
packet today, so I gave you a copy of, okay, so how I do my bank record every month, right? So if I did it, the financials are every month on the electronic console packets. But if you wanted to move forward and, if you chose to move forward without this auditor, right, I could give you the bank, how I do my bank record. So, and then I highlighted where I'm pulling the numbers from that are on the bank record, so you can see. And if I submitted this to finance every month, and it was up to the, chair of finance, whatever you do, to make sure, yeah, these are all the right numbers, everything balances. It's up to you how you want to do it. The other thing too is if I gave you the check register, and anytime there's a voided check, I think I put that in there too. So like on this, there's a voided check, and then attach a copy of the voided check, so you see. This wouldn't take me long to do, but because it's not like we have 20 bank accounts at the bank, one bank account. So this balances, and I can show you this balances, the money's there. Now, where, Adam and I balance in every single fund to a penny, but maybe I put something from BO8 and BO1, the money's there.
Right.
I mean, it
It's
should maybe
it's
allocate.
different.
Now, not down, but you don't really have that problem very often. But it's up to you how you want to move forward.
well, in terms of expense to the village, you said it was a salary position. Rough order of magnitude, what's the salary annually?
It's 10,778, so almost 11,000. Plus PRS.
That's PRS, forget about that.
Okay, so to make the chair aware, we are currently in a search for a part-time administrative position for the village. If, as part of that part-time person, we give them responsibility to do the bank rec. Okay, that's a second set of eyes. Now, it's not independent because that person works for the fiscal officer, but at least it's a second set of eyes to say, okay, somebody else has looked at the bank rec and more than what council would do. I mean, can I go through the bank rec? Sure I can. Is that really the best use of my time?
Right.
But if we did something like that with a part-time person, maybe that would satisfy, our audit
Everybody
concerns.
takes the work off of me.
Well, yeah, exactly.
There are two people doing it, one person doing it.
Okay, but then we don't have a fiscal auditor and we take that 11, 13, whatever the number is, and we apply that to the part-time position, and we get that person plus we get other duties for them to perform, and we come out with a better answer. Now, okay, so that takes us to the investment board. By code, the fiscal auditor is a member of the investment board, along with the solicitor and the mayor.
That could be, I mean,
We'd have to amend
Yeah, that's our own local.
Yeah,
Because the ORC doesn't.
right, it doesn't provide for that. So we would have to amend that and probably suggest that the chair of finance would be the third member of that committee.
and now somebody on that board I've carried that certification from the state, it's not much, you have to take so many classes a year, which are free, but just someone on that board should, because I carry, or I could still carry, I always did it to make sure we had somebody, because if we decide to invest, we do it, but that's would be the only thing.
Okay, or we could go and get someone from the village, to step up and serve on the investment board
Maybe as a volunteer.
as a volunteer position.
Someone with
That's a possibility, but we have to amend our own code. I mean, it just doesn't seem like, I'm finding the way, but if somebody told me, hey, we're not gonna have a fiscal auditor, I wouldn't be nervous about that.
I did talk to the state auditor a few weeks ago, he was in wrapping up our last audit, and I asked his opinion, and he said, it's a great thing the village has, he said, but it's spending money for something, do you need to spend, he says, if you have someone else look at it, then, so.
Okay.
So you guys haven't had this discussion on HR yet, have you, Chris?
As far, that's coming next in a half hour or whenever we get to it, but it's part of our discussion because there is the possibility that there's a candidate for a part-time position that does have auditing experience and could take on some of those duties without officially calling them an auditor. And that seems like a neat way to put this together.
When you say candidate, you're talking about for the admin assistant.
Admin assistant, but they have auditing experience, and so that, and I don't know all the details, I'm just saying it's a possibility, that would work well.
And as long as you could articulate to the HR committee that basically, I could see where there might be a situation where some members might say, oh my God, you're getting rid of an auditor. Nobody will be looking, but please explain to them the situation. And, a lot of what was in Adam's job description, either he didn't do or, it was redundant, in terms of, what he was actually doing to encourage us to say we have balanced books. But, I'm right there with you. If we were looking for, unless you have a serious objection, if you were looking for a recommendation from the finance committee, I would say there's really no
need to do this, yeah. I think. Now, let's step up right now and say, then both of us need to be signatories to the bank account. And that'll get us through another 17 months. Okay. And then we just need to make that part of the process. Do we have to be bonded?
No, because we have, now our insurance covers.
Okay, so we have a general liability issue, okay, that protects us from mistakes. Okay, and then you just need to coordinate with us as to, what's check signing day, or when you get check signed and somebody comes in and somebody handles it.
Right.
Okay,
easy enough.
I think that's the fair way to handle it.
Chris, how are you doing?
I'm hanging in there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's rehab?
slow but Slow but steady. Okay, so
Let's get back on the agenda.
tax budget,
So I need, here's the draft, I'm sorry, it's not 100% complete yet. I'm still working on it today. I have the majority of the tax revenue, on the phone, but now I'm kind of working through the weeds where it's all the smaller things like, if you recall, I told you, the village had water fund, I did a transfer instead of an advance, so we had money there, I gotta do the paperwork with the state to get that moved. So it's like, this is the puzzle piece to go together, but it will be done by tomorrow when the council passes on Monday.
And is this one of the deliverables that goes to the county?
Exactly. And then in addition to this, I think we're gonna be in good shape because our balance, carryover balance won't be this great. And with the 2 new reserve funds, that money they won't be counting in the carryover. In addition to this, this is all that's required to go to the county, but I know they're requesting like a 5-year budget, they would like to see that. So I was gonna also give them a cover letter with it from me, just letting them know we're working on a 5-year budget. We heard what you said last year. We did this, we did the reserve funds, we are working on a 5-year budget and a strategic plan, and we're in the process, so, to let them know that. And I think, I feel good that we'll be in a good place with them this year. But I apologize, it's not done, I'm trying to wrap this up today.
All right.
and
Are we
And as
ready?
soon as I get done, I mean, we'll only see you in packets tomorrow, but if, I'll give you guys a summary of it in my report as well.
Any questions?
yeah, is there anything in this that you're uncomfortable with?
No,
Okay, so, obviously, the devil's in the details, and I haven't read the details, but,
so in order to do this, I did an Excel, 50-page Excel spreadsheet, I have to then take it from there, total it, and put it in here,
that's,
so,
yeah,
like I said, it's just these things like, like I said, the new capital, reserve funds and things like that, and then working with the solicitor on getting the money out of the Headwater project and back into the, general fund, because if you recall, I explained before, you use the word transfer, it's permanently there, if you use the word advance, you can take it back, and I didn't know you could advance it, so now I have to ask permission to move it back, so.
okay, all right, so, with that being said, you would anticipate few, if any, questions from the county.
And I don't think there should be one, like I said, I wanted to do that cover letter just for me, letting them know we, heard what they said, we did the reserve funds, and I think that's gonna go a long way. And then letting them know, I am working on the 5-year budget as part of my project in class, but also that we're gonna have that strategic planning meeting, so if everything goes together, it'll show that we're really working to move forward.
Okay, are there any other reserve funds that we need to consider at this point, or?
I wouldn't do anything right now, I would see where we end the year with the income tax. One of the things also on here, and I did show you that the reserve funds were, approved by the county.
Yeah, now the one question I had, since we're kind of like jumping ahead to the next agenda item, is there was wording about not to exceed 1 mil, even though we wanted the 500,000.
And I did go back and I read the legislation, so I made it clear to the county, so they revised it, they did.
Okay.
So they fixed, this, and this will be consequences too.
Okay,
That it's only 500,000 for Bell Road, and we anticipated that initial transfer this year, and then 600,000 over 6 years for the large equipment, and that would be 100,000 per year.
Yeah.
So they did make that correction there.
was that an error on their part, or did they just want to give us the largest to say?
I think
not
it
to
was just
exceed?
an error on their part, because when I went back and read the legislation, it clearly stated what it should have been. So I think because we said 2 years, when I think they thought 500,000.
Per year.
Because the other one is 100,000 per year, so, it was just a clerical there, so that's correct now.
Okay,
And
I
then,
think that covers user funds.
and then the next thing was, the OPNF costs. I know there was legislation introduced at the state level, and the mayor may have more on this, but he's on Main Street, not here, so I don't, know what his input was on this, but, so just so you know, has been proposed that for Ohio Police and Fire pension, I think the 35 years, municipalities or, and public entities, we contribute 19.5% to their retirement. And there's a proposal to change it up to 26.5 over the next 5 years. So we're going to go up from like 19.5 to 20.9 to 22.3. So it could be a significant increase over, so in 2024, just as, I kind of did a rough estimate of if you did a 2.5% increase in salaries per year, in 2024, paying at 19.5%, the village's contribution to OPM would be $194,000. But if you take that same 2.5% yearly salary increase, but then up it to the 26.5, you're at $264,000 for OPM contribution, so that's
No,
$70,000 increase.
with the rate of inflation,
Right.
it's
So, that,
hard to keep it up.
that should be a budget, thing we'll have to be aware of, but I don't think that's been voted on, it's just been proposed, as far as I know, at this point.
It's been proposed at the state level. Okay, so there's nothing for us to do until the state mandates that this is something we have to respond to, but then it is a $70,000 hit to the budget
Yes.
if that actually comes to play.
Yep.
Okay?
And the good news is we're better positioned than many.
Oh, absolutely.
There'll be some townships and other municipalities that are gonna be hurting when it goes down.
And this is one of the things, that I know that we were doing those, salary things for employees, I think it
Yep.
showed up with the contribution, so everybody understands what the village is doing.
And it may in fact be totally reasonable to do that, but it is a hit to the budget.
Mhm.
So, okay, so we'll just wait.
But we have no say so.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be, yeah. It's one of those unfunded mandates sitting at the village level. Okay,
Next item is investment board. We talked a little bit about it earlier in the meeting, but, do we have any wrap up?
I'm not on the investment board.
Right.
So, this auditor did send out some information from their, the meeting they had and what they're recommending to contribute. Or that we start investing in, so,
Now, there is one comment that you had for the finance committee meeting about the recommendations on the investment.
I don't sit on the investment board, so I don't know, but I know we wanna get money invested, and I think that's a good thing. But considering right now we're working on the strategic plan and we're working on the 5-year budget, I personally would wait to invest something until we get that done, because I think we're working aggressively on that. And then if you hired a company like me, or I believe, then they would look at you, what are you planning to do? And then they would help you decide what would be appropriate to invest. But I don't know where the investment board got their numbers and how, maybe they went through a process, I'm not sure. And then,
What's that document that George was looking
it should be in there, I think it's too.
I have an extra copy.
at? That would be it.
Okay, this is the- So I don't really know on that. So see, it does look like they did talk to, there's something here from, it's a hypothetical portfolio illustration. So, I don't know if you want to,
Well, I think what they did is they took a rough cut at the process.
oh, you got it.
Just to say, okay, this is how much money you have, how much money do you need on a monthly basis, what should you, what would we recommend, as a percentage of, securities versus municipal bonds
Right.
and what have you, and come up with sort of a rough cut.
Right, and so if you have it staggered, you know, so that you have access to money at different intervals, you know, because you want to coordinate it with your projects, right?
Right.
So,
So, I don't have any problem waiting for that 5-year plan to then say, okay, make an adjustment to the numbers. But, there's an opportunity, and I get it. The village is not in the business of making money off of their funds. But if those funds are just sitting there, then we have an obligation to at least try to make something off of them in the short term. And if we can pick up, the meter document suggests that we can pick up close to $60,000 a year in income.
you gotta.
If the police and fire program goes through, there's $60,000 that could go against that and sort of offset that problem. So it's worth doing it.
Gee, I don't know if Adam's gonna be at the next meeting, but obviously the mayor will be there. Do you want to try to have, a short finance committee meeting before the council meeting so that you can get there with, this?
I guess the long pole in the tent is Adam, because, where's he even living anymore? I don't know.
No, he's still
He's
there.
there, right?
He's here until August.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, we should get him in front of the finance committee and have a conversation. What,
My apologies. Can I come in still?
No, that's the next meeting.
Oh, yeah.
You're early, you're free to
HR
jump.
starts at 11:30.
It's a public
We got
meeting.
some business to take care of anyway.
but it's I think getting Adam in front of us is a good idea.
The finance committee, our regular scheduled meeting is the 15th, next Friday.
Okay, I don't have any problems with that if we can get Adam here
Yeah, if he's available.
Unless you wanted to do it before, when's council?
Monday night.
Okay.
But at least you've got to talk to Adam, and have some insight.
Well, yeah, I think Meter is the right people to work with. Their fee structure is, I think, completely reasonable at $5,000.
And they do the Star Ohio, they run that for the state.
Yeah.
So
So,
they know what we can invest in, what we can't.
so it's a totally reasonable program, but we have to give them the parameters of, I don't want them to go sweep all of our funds and then we go, oops.
No, and a lot of people use them, I believe Russell Township uses them for county, because they know, you have to be very careful what you invest in, because the government and they
Right.
know what we can do. They do a lot of training for the state, so.
But when you had Star Ohio at 10 basis points or less, it wasn't really worth thinking about. But now that program it's at 1% or a little better, and treasuries are up, so there's an opportunity to make some money. So, yeah,
So we'll keep the meeting for next Friday. and I'll
Yep,
double
yep,
check
and let's
that.
and obviously, with the proviso that Adam's gonna be available, if not, then there's probably not a whole lot for us to meet about. And then the only other action item is to get that signature card done, so that you have options to get checks signed.
So we want to find out then too, what all is entailed with that. I'll have to find out. Change it, if we have something in our codified, because I remember it was a to-do we had to go through years ago, getting it changed, because nobody clicked and tried it. So then we have to do fiscal officer, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
to make sure we have whatever,
Whatever that is, we may have to amend
yeah.
the code. To-
All right, looks like we've addressed all the agenda
Okay,
items.
so then for Monday, just to be clear, so, HR, what you have to decide between the fiscal auditor position, and then, you would have to change the signer, and then the investment period, right?
And I think we need the mayor's input as to
Right.
what he thinks. I mean, there's nothing sacrosanct about 3 people on the investment board. We could have 5 or 7 or whatever
Right.
we wanted. But, so, you know, if he wants to have the chair of finance, if he wants to have 2 people from the community, whatever he might want to try to direct us.
And you could also have the entire finance committee.
Yeah.
You and I.
Yeah. And that's fine too. But we need to just change the rules.
Right. And is there anything else that we have to change?
I don't believe so. You know, unless it's somewhere in the code,
Right,
which articulates the composition. So,
And we need to tell Bridie what we're looking for and she can find it.
yeah, to make sure we get everything covered.
Okay, Danielle, looks like we've wrapped up the agenda.
Yeah.
Chris, got any comments?
No, I'm good.
Danielle?
No, I'm good.
I have none. Given that there are no further actions or business to transact, the Finance Committee is adjourned at 11:13 on the 6th of July.
Take your wife to an early lunch.
She doesn't go on. She has a hard taskmaster.
She can have a lunch today.
Okay, Leslie?
Thanks for your flexibility.
Hey, no problem, it's, I realize that, you might have some limitations here, so. I didn't think you'd be on a walker though, Chris.
Well,
That was a little surprising.
you know, it's really just a balance issue. And it's
We are.
It is 11:30 here on Wednesday, July 6th. This is a meeting of the HR committee. We are on YouTube. Present, Councilwoman Kavanaugh, Councilman Berger, the fiscal officer, and the police chief. So, to keep things moving, we'll go to the police chief first for what he needs.
Thank you. The only thing that I believe Danielle had on the agenda was regarding part-time patrolman pay. We adjusted the range and now we have to set the amount.
Okay,
Is that the proper way to describe it, Danielle?
Yeah, because we changed the range, which is now $22.57 to $30 an hour, and our officers are being paid $26.38. So I don't know, my assumption is that you wanted to make a change because you changed the range, but I don't know. Only into it, so I'm just bringing it to your attention.
okay, so we changed the range because we weren't attracting enough part-time officers. So, so we're raising the rate. And I assume that the intention was to raise it to $30 an hour.
That was the intent, yeah.
Right. And therefore,
Are we gonna go that high, because if you change it to $30 an hour, just so you know, at your end, you have to change the range again. And here's what others from part-time is, and let's make copies of that.
okay. Okay. So, I don't know what this means. Do you know, can you help me? Part-time, so you're saying that the start,
Because a lot of them have this range, so
Okay.
there's like they're saying, oh, so like Orange Village, the range is 20 to 45, so it's not really.
okay, but, okay, so they have a range of 20 to 45, but
We don't know if it's,
we don't know what they're really hiring.
right, so we don't know if they're all the same.
And I give you guys examples, the last meeting, I had that jotted down in my office, if you need me to grab that.
Now, but, so Sugar Falls is 2630 to 3194
So almost $2 more at the top.
at the top. So, I mean, essentially, that's what you're competing for part-time.
Of course, by, yeah.
So, our intention was to go to $30 an hour now. So, that means that any part-time officer currently working part-time would jump to that rate.
Correct.
Okay. Does that cause us a problem with any?
Budgetary, no, because we haven't been able to fill a lot of the shifts that we normally have the part-timers on because we've been short-staffed. So budget-wise, we wouldn't need to make any amendments to the budget. The one thing I would suggest though is that I would like to maybe do something similar to what we do with full-time. During a probationary period, a period of training, a period of probation, we might want to start off at a lower amount, and then once you clear your probation, you would move into the $30 an hour pay rate. So
Okay,
So you start them off at the 22-ish, or 22.57, or 23,
I was thinking 25, 26, somewhere around there to start, and then after the probationary period is cleared, we would put them to the $30 an hour rate.
okay, and probationary is 6 months.
Correct.
Okay, and then, you know, I don't know how you describe this, regular part-time, I guess, is $30 an hour?
Mhm.
Okay,
To
Do you have anybody under probation?
part-time, yes,
yes.
Dennis Harmon.
So would it make sense, because he's making 26.38, to make that, because that's currently what part-time is making, so we would have the 26.38, and then the probation is up at 30.
So he would remain at that rate.
yeah, that's
until the
fine.
probationary period.
Isn't the Scott boy, the McKellen, he would be probation?
He's-
He still is, he's
Full-time.
full-time. So we
Oh, we're
started.
talking on the part-time.
Only part-timers, right? Okay, okay, so process. So
You would need
we
to,
need to recommend this to council on Monday night.
you should make a motion Monday night saying effective, and this is the first meeting. So I would make it effective July 16th, because that starts the next pay period.
Okay,
That the rates would be 26.38 for people who are, for probationary period, and then after that.
July 16th,
Mm-hmm.
2022.
But they don't have to go backwards.
Okay. Does that solve, well, does that make your life easier?
It does.
Okay.
It would be a very, very helpful tool.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so before we say done, Ms. Kavanaugh, do you have questions, concerns?
Yes, no concerns, but so we're not gonna scotch the 2257, we leave that, but we're really talking about an effective 20.
The 2257 is our range, so we're working on the salary tier, so
Right.
so our range is 2257 to 30, so, but currently, all part-timers are making 26.38, and we don't want them to take a pay cut, right? So
Right,
we can
right.
make 26.38 for all new hired part-time for their probationary period, and then anybody that's out of their probationary period would be $30.
And that you think will solve some, if not all, of the problem?
Yeah, we're still, on the search for part-timers, so we've got 4 currently now. We have, Ruth was involved in the interview with Kaylee, so she is still, we're still looking to get her, sworn in here in the near future. We're just waiting for the final test, state of Ohio test. She's passed everything else, the psychological, the background, the voice stress. So we're just waiting for the final state of Ohio test, and she'll be good to go. So I would hope we could do it by the July 11th meeting. If the test happens, they have to schedule the test. If it doesn't, we have to push it back to next month. To get her sworn in.
What's the test like?
The state of Ohio test for law enforcement officers.
So it's like a board type thing?
Yeah, it's like a certification. It's the peace officer certification. So once she's completed with that phase, she's good to go. She's passed all of our background and pre-employment testing at this point.
And we presume that'll be very soon.
We do.
Okay.
Hopefully within a week.
And you might know by Monday.
Yeah, if I know by Monday, I'll certainly let you know first thing and we'll get that handled. But if it does not happen and we don't have the results, then we'll have to push it back on us.
Anything else? on this issue?
I don't think so. It's
Okay.
the only one.
Anything else for you?
Good to go.
All
I
right,
just have one thing for you while you're here, because I have on the list wellness program.
Mhm.
So in the police department, they're making some modifications to, the area,
Yeah.
explain.
So, yeah, we in the event we finally followed through and Kaylee's hired, we didn't want to throw in the general population on the locker room. So we changed some things around, bought some shawling and moved some things around the PD to create a separate locker room. So we're all squared away over there. And in the process of doing that, I had to move some of our fitness equipment out. So you guys talked about the wellness program. So over the last week, I brought over the treadmill and the stationary bike there now downstairs here at Village Hall for the purposes of future wellness program if you guys choose to do so. So we could have donated the equipment to another police department, but we thought it would be a good idea to not get rid of it. It's very high quality equipment.
As far as wellness program, that has to be your basic lowest level to have equipment in the basement.
We have it like months ago, So, and another one thing, so it's been my desire for years to do a wellness program, and then now with our insurance rates going up, I'm trying to come up with something. So when I found out they want to have these things they want to get rid of, I said, well, just don't get rid of it yet. If you need the room, put it downstairs for now, because if we could do something to encourage something to help us with insurance. insurance.
You mean go to a place, go to a workout place?
Well, if they're in the basement here, we got they're available.
For people.
We already have one employee who likes to treadmill, but can't get to the gym, so we're looking, it's right here, like I'll stay after work, you know what I mean? So, in fact, better health and healthcare rates, for the healthcare, so I don't have anything in place with that yet, because it's just all happening, but, I can mention it to Chrissy, so don't get rid of it, just at least keep it, and then we'll figure out the wellness part of it later. But even until we have a wellness program, if we have it there, it can be.
Yeah,
Anybody can come off
We
and
just make it known that it's available,
Mhm.
and, if they want to come in before or after, if they want to do their lunch hour over here, whatever, that's great.
A treadmill and a what?
Stationary bicycle.
Okay.
That's how I want to explain.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay, so insurance rates. Are we on January 1st?
We're December 1st, so
Okay.
usually, it's only 90 days before, so they'll be sending out our stuff to the employees to do, I think it starts on September. But they usually send out a form for the employees to complete
And that's medical mutual.
medical mutual.
So then maybe September, they're going up.
I just,
You can take it to the bank. The rates are going up.
Yeah.
They're going up big time.
Again,
Well, because of inflation, because of costs, because of unavailability of staffing, medical facilities, yeah, rates are gonna take a huge hit this year. So,
and they always shop around, so we have Gallagher Benefit Services, and they do our, they're a broker, and then they shop around. So not mutuals who we have currently, but they'll shop around with everybody, and that way everybody, and then they get costs from everybody.
okay.
okay, so that's the wellness part of it.
Yep.
So, all right,
That's all I have. Last thing, thank you very much for your involvement recently with the PD. We've never really had HR involved before. It was a little clumsy in the beginning when we tried to get everybody in there, in that little room, but it's worked out really well last time. We had one from each committee, and it
And you
does.
don't have to sunshine.
Yeah, it does give us a little more, a little more input into the interview, so it worked out really well. So I look forward to working with you guys in that process in the future. We've had some good luck here in the last couple of months. So all is good.
stay out of gate smells.
Yes, thank you. We'll do it.
Did that ever get nicely?
Not yet. I
So,
think after a couple of years, things will settle down. All right, guys.
Thank you.
See you. Thanks.
thank you for trying to help me.
Hey, no problem. We'll get it for.
Okay. In the previous meeting, just to catch up, Ms. Ruth, we talked about the fiscal auditor, the job description, and whether we thought as a finance committee that it was necessary. We came to the conclusion that we don't think it's a necessary position
At all.
at all. And the reason is that, and correct me if I say something wrong here, Danielle, but from a fund receipt standpoint, 99% of the funds that the village gets come in electronically. It's not a deposit processing issue. So and that was one of the things that we tried to do with the fiscal auditor, was to have the fiscal auditor take the deposits to the bank. That they, as a separate function from the fiscal officer, so there were checks and balances. Well, so much of what we do is electronic. That issue doesn't really apply. The fiscal auditor signs checks as part of a two-signer program. So both the fiscal officer and the fiscal auditor have to sign checks. The backup to that is the chair of finance. not, well, it's actually, this time around, it's, yeah, Councilman Woody. But our thinking is that if both Councilman Woody and myself are check signers, there's three of us, then we can make that work. Okay?
So, let me make sure I understand, right now we have had both you and Adam sign.
All it's two signers.
Yeah.
So it's usually, Adam and I usually sign them, but if he's on vacation, or on vacation, the chair of finance would sign.
Okay, so we still have two signers.
We'd still have two signers, there'd still be, yes, there still would be, a control process. It just wouldn't be done by the fiscal audit. So the other thing that we've suggested, the other major function, well, one of the major functions of the fiscal auditor is the review of the fund balances, okay? We probably can, with this part-time assistant, administrative assistant that we're looking at, we can probably get a lot of that function handled by the part-time administrative assistant.
The one that would end up in the building.
Well, she would be a floater. Okay, but, so we're thinking from a finance standpoint that it's $13,000 a year with benefits, with,
Well, but it's part-time, some of them are different.
well,
PRS.
PRS. Okay, well, it's 11.
But we would say up to 20 hours a week.
Yeah, but so we could take, right now it's a salary of almost $11,000 plus the benefit. We could take that money and apply it against the part-time administrative person. And so, finance committee's recommendation to HR is not to have a fiscal auditor. There's no requirement. We have to change our local code, but there's no state requirement that we have to have a fiscal auditor.
And other villages function probably this way,
Oh, yes.
We get audited by the state every year.
just like the school.
And then, Chris said earlier too, that maybe this person, we do have a good candidate with a lot of experience. Maybe rather than we and Adam both doing bank recs and taking all that time for someone that entered all that into the system again, just have this person do the bank rec of my books, you know what I mean? So then you're not doing duplication of duties, you're not, you're getting your money's worth, and then it would be someone separate doing the bank rec. So,
There's always this worry when checks were still being written, that people found ways, they found devious ways to, and you can think of the same examples that I did.
We did do paper checks, we signed them, there's a couple, I think you'll see on the thing I gave you earlier, but for Home Depot, I cut a check, so it's in the system, but then, I had to call and do it over the phone, because then they don't get it on time, and then I get a finance charge. So, some of those things, but we do paper checks, and then every time the checks are cut, I do, it's called Positive Pay, I have set up with Huntington Bank, so I give them a list from my computer system, it's a list of electronically, it's a list of all the checks, who it was made out to, the date it was made out to, and the dollar amount, and it goes to Huntington. So that check number has a different name, or if anyone tries to mess with that check, it won't cash it, and then I get a warning, and it says, are you okay with this? Do you approve us paying this
So
check?
right there is a checking mechanism. Okay,
And we've done that maybe.
all right, I'm chewing on this because I didn't expect to hear this.
Okay.
It would say,
We still have a separate person.
Yeah.
We're
Well-
looking at, but
Except the only issue is that person reports to you, so, that's really not separation.
right.
But I think when I walked in here this morning, I was firmly in favor of hiring a replacement as a fiscal auditor. But in listening to the discussion of the jobs and the repetitive nature of a lot of the work that Adam does with respect to Danielle, it's like, this is just duplication of effort as opposed to really creating something of value. So, so I'm more inclined to say, okay, let's look and see if we can find, if this part-time person with audit experience can come on board, and yeah, maybe that's the way to do it. There's a separate issue, and that is the fiscal auditor is by our local code, member of the investment board. We have an investment board, it is the mayor, the fiscal auditor, and the solicitor. We would have to amend our rules and decide who we are going to replace the fiscal auditor with. Now, there's nothing in the rules to say you can have 3 people on the investment board. We could have 5, 7, whatever the mayor recommends, I think. So it may be that we recommend that both members of council who sit on the finance committee sit on the investment board, and maybe we find a volunteer from the community to join us, and that gives us 5 people. I think that maybe that's the way we'll go, but finance is thinking about that.
So, so that was mayor, auditor, and fiscal officer?
No, solicitor,
Solicitor,
yeah,
okay. And so that it's whatever we craft it into, it could be mayor, 2 people of council, solicitor, and community member.
right. Now, I mean, let's be honest, the investment board, they've met for a grand total of 6 months. Okay, prior to that,
We didn't know.
we didn't know we had one, and we didn't know we were required to meet. So, and fortunately, at the time, the opportunities for investment were really small, and the money we could make was nothing. Now that's changing.
This is what you were addressing.
Right, with the interest rates, right, this is what we're talking about, is, we were given a proposal that said, hey, we could make $60,000 a year in interest income, and, okay, that's worth looking at. So, so that part of the puzzle has to change, but from an HR perspective, I think if we can get comfortable with having another administrative person part-time who can do the bank rec and some of that audit issue, number one, frees up a ton of time for hers, which is a good thing. Number 2, it's another set of eyes. Now, Danielle did provide to the finance committee the bank rec from the reconciliation of the bank account from last month. Okay, so, which can be provided to council every month. I mean, there's nothing that says that council can't look at the
The
bank
financials
rec.
are on there, but I can give you more in depth,
Well, we could have
that's.
whoever the individual is sign off on it and have them submit it independently, that they have reconciled the bank account and with the direction of the finance committee. And that would give us some confidence, I think, that we're covered. So,
And then where Adam gives that report every month, his is in QuickBooks, mine is in fund balances, might not be, you just have to get used to reading it, but I mean, I can still give you, in essence, more detail than what Adam gave you, but those are what I post online, but I can include them in the paper packets for those that don't online, and then you can still see every line item or, where we are in respect to what we budgeted, to what we received. Adam's is, might be easier to read report, but I have it all there, and it's all posted online, and you just make, put it in your packages.
All right.
okay, so, that leads us to the part-time administrative assistant. And I'm just putting a name with the topic, and is that Victoria? Okay. So, I did understand that, you have met
Yeah,
with some of these individuals.
I got, for that administrative role, because it was gonna flip between the two departments, I was collecting resumes, and I know we're in the summer, you know, things out, especially groups. So I narrowed it down, I got rid of the ones that didn't make sense. I gave a bunch to the group, the building department, I said, look through these and tell me who you think would be worth, maybe. And she came up with the same three that I came up with. So I did interviews, last week, just kind of explain it would be a new administrative role, kind of to float between the two departments. And of the three people, this is the one that truly stood out for both of us. She does have auditing experience. Another thing I liked was she had great personality, very positive approach. She also has, where she's at now, she does like processes, like help you to, you know, improve your process and that. Oh, process consultant. So I just thought that could be a good thing too, because sometimes. So
Just like streamlining your,
Yeah,
what you
but
do.
sometimes you need somebody else to, why are you doing it this way? This is the only way they need to do it.
So just thinking outside the box.
Right. And, so she just stood out for both Ruth and myself. The other two candidates,
Okay, so your recommendation to the committee is that we interview Victoria.
and Ruth, I talked to Ruth.
Okay,
You're in agreement together. I did read through these.
okay. So, have you had the conversation about salary? What the
I told her what the
salary
salary range was,
is? Okay.
and she said she would, for sure want towards the upper end, which is 20. I think the range was
Yeah,
22. But, she would, you know, because the range is 1374 to 2204, so she'd want to be at the upper range. I did explain it wasn't, I don't want to make any false promises, because we got ourselves in trouble in the past, so I told her it's not full-time, I don't envision it going full-time, are you still interested, because it would be part-time. And, that appealed to her very much, she wants part-time, so, and she wants to.
okay. Does the upper range conflict with the, do we have a problem with the full-time? Administrative assistant?
If you went to max, there would be a problem.
There would be a problem. So, okay, so that's something that would have to be discussed.
But do we admin assistant, so it would be, they both be under this? That's-
Because these, we correlate the numbers, so number one, administrative assistant, they're both at the same range, that's the part-time one, and number 25 is the full-time one,
Is
so
the
the pay
full-time
range is the same.
Okay, so, and is currently the full-time administrative assistant is at the top of the pay range?
Near the top, not that.
Near, okay. So, I mean, I think we have to be careful there.
Or you just bring that up to make it with matching it?
I wouldn't, I think the full-time person should be paid more than the part-time person. Now, how much more, is a question mark, but.
Well, the part-time person isn't gonna be getting health benefits
Right.
and such, so there's that. What do you say about that?
I have no problem with that, I mean, I do full-time, I know she does a lot more, you know what I mean, but, and I don't know if you'd have to max it out, you know, maybe
Okay,
it'd have to be, I'm trying to see what it is.
I think there's also something we said from the police department that bringing somebody in under a probationary basis at, you know, a lower rate, and then after 6 months saying, okay, now the full rate is, and telling them upfront, okay, you know?
usually do a letter when they start saying this is probationary period, this is what your pay is, and after successful.
Right, so I think, but I think we need to have that in hand, and then I think we should want to interview this person and talk to them about their audit experience and whether or not they're willing to do
Yeah, we
this
have
type of
that
accounting,
question.
right, this accounting issue. But, you know, I think this would be positive to get them on board, whoever that person is.
Well, I'm just thinking to get Ruth out of her office.
Okay.
Right off the bat, she doesn't have to be there for 2 weeks a year, or every year, second. Okay, there was one other person, and I'm not, this is what you narrowed it down to, you distilled it down to the one you gave us. And there was a person that was local, but she must have not covered some bases.
Probably, I mean, there was a lot that jumped around, like, you know what I mean, if they're only here, I don't want, no one wants someone that's having jobs every year, because by the time you train them, it takes time.
She's a recent retired. But that's okay, I'm just asking, and your process is you sifted through them.
And I got with them, and I did, I took them all over the building department to meet Ruth, because she was covering the office, and didn't want to take her out of the office, I would definitely, if you interview, again, you don't have Ruth there. But then, you know, Ruth did have some questions, you know, when I brought them over, she should definitely included in the process, I just didn't want to do it away from the office.
Okay. I have, this one.
Okay. Yeah, well,
And this was, I'm just running it by you because it stood out to me. So you can just tell me if that didn't.
I'll help you pull it. I'll look at that.
Yeah, I just want to hear
Okay,
what transpired. And I don't have anything personal about it, I just know.
okay, I'll pull it up.
I did notice it was a definite.
and, well, and you noticed that she's,
She, English.
yeah. So, okay, so can we try to set the interview up for next week?
Sure.
Okay,
Should I have a regular schedule, HR meeting for the 15th at 9.
Yeah,
okay, so we can
and
use
that's
that.
when Mike Carroll comes, correct?
Yeah, I believe so, because it was supposed to be the last one.
Right, we postpone that. Okay, so let me know what we can do there. Now, as part of looking at the salary tier, we said that it doesn't match with our, what we
Well, the
coded.
salary tier, I think when Mike Carroll set it up, it did all fit, but now we've added the full-time administrative assistant, we've changed a couple things in the PD, so now we kind of look at it, which kind of brings me to the HR consultants.
Right, which is the next issue.
Mhm.
So the question is, okay, I mean, what Mike created was good. I mean, he took what I threw on a piece of paper and he expanded it and made a lot of improvements to it and appreciate all his help. The question would be, you know, neither Mike nor I are paid professional HR people and understanding how setting up these tier schedules would be. And so the question now is, would it make sense for us to engage a professional firm that does this for municipalities every day? And say, this is kind of what we're thinking, what are we missing?
Okay.
In the past, we had Clemens and Nelson a few years ago, and they set up the salary ranges, so they did a survey of communities comparable to ours around the state and helped us set up the range. There's also, what is it, Mansard Gavin, I believe, is the company. They're, they're attorneys, but they work with public entities and help them with these types of things. It would be like, the Clemens Nelson most, where if I had a question, where Bridie's good at what she does, right, but she doesn't specialize in HR. So there's, there's times where I ask Bridie something, she has to do the research, what we call HR lawyer, they know about the particular time in a little bit of time rather than a big chunk of time. I did reach out to the, Mansard Gavin, and they offer a $200 an hour, they bill by the 10th of an hour on a monthly cycle, and then any legal services that are performed that month would be billed. And then if you had a project, like if you want to redo the Plain Hamlet, or you want to do the salaries here, you could come, we'd go into the agreement with them for a flat dollar amount, and then we could work you through that. What I liked about them was $200 an hour, which is a little less than mine, but it's 5 to 10th of an hour for just what we need.
So,
They didn't have a routine.
and they currently do work for,
I believe that, I know they do a lot of training, when I go to my training around the state, they do a lot of, but Clemens Nelson does stuff too, but, they're there, I think they do some work for the county. If not presently, they did in the past, so
Clemens Nelson did,
this Mansard Gavin.
Mansard Gavin. And where's Mansard Gavin located there? They must be local.
Oh.
So then, and that's just an aside. We would keep them by this 1/10 of an hour on retainer. So
Yeah, I mean, because I know Clemens Nelson, when we had them, and a lot of people use Clemens Nelson, because I think their retainer was $175 a month, and that would give you a small amount of time, but like I said, if you have a question, they know off the tip of their tongue, they weren't using much time. Clemens Nelson, I know they have like Russell, Bainbridge, Aurora, Chester, all of them,
Yeah.
use them. But Mansard Gavin, I asked if there was a retainer, he said it was just $200 an hour billed by the 10th of an hour, it's not a retainer, but if you had a special project, then you could go into an agreement for that.
I kind of like so Mansard Gavin is the one who does everybody else around.
No, Clemens Nelson.
I like that. They'd be more familiar, don't you think, Chris? With function.
yeah, either one, I think, could satisfy me, but, I mean, number one, we have to perceive that we have a need, that, I think my fear is that with the schedule that we put together, the tiered schedule, with, getting it coordinated with where we are with the salary ranges is fine. But have we addressed all of the issues properly? And if we haven't, then we should have somebody at least review what we've done and say, did you think about this?
But I think I showed you in finance too, where like the pay, those are all on, I don't know how they got to those schedules or the ranges, or, you know what I mean, how they do those steps, I don't know how that works. And what makes sense.
So then what we have here, I'm just reviewing. This is really a cook-up of between you and Mike Carroll?
No,
No, that's been on the books
That's-
forever.
Okay.
And that's just a range, but the problem with that is it's just a range and it's very big. So the problem we're running into now is, so you bring somebody in and you start in the police department, they're brand new, fresh out of the academy. When I first started here, all full-time officers made the same amount and now I'm over here. So this new person on the academy got the same amount as the guy who's been here 27 years. So then they started setting up the step system in the police department. But then it was, the thought is, well, shouldn't it be like that in all departments? And shouldn't most communities have a step program, so if I wanna make this much, I gotta do this, and this, get this certification, or like now in the service department, you have a mechanic and a laborer, or after so many years, if they're all doing the same job, then it's one pay, you know what I mean? So what is the step system look like?
And this is giving me a headache because I'm thinking about unit meetings at school with unhappy people and that sort of thing. All economically, and it doesn't sound like it costs us an arm and a leg, yes, but an independent set of eyes would be a good thing.
And then what I would do is I would invite Clemens Nelson to make a written proposal to us of their fee schedule, and I would ask them, based upon, the tiered pay schedule that we have, what it would take for them to review that and to offer suggestions. And I'm less worried about it from a scale as I am about a process. What are the things that we haven't thought about?
You want me to send that to just Clemens Wilson or Clemens
Well,
Wilson?
you can send it to both of them and see what their response is. And let's see, what they come back with and what makes sense.
Mhm.
And then we can make a recommendation to council based upon that and say, hey, we want to go spend, what we anticipate to be X amount of dollars to come up with a salary tiered schedule that is comprehensive. And then I think we'll meet with Mike next Friday and get his input and update as to the salary tier and how he put it together. I think that's good information for all of us to have. And then we'll see what the response is from the HR consultants. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, it puts all the ducks in a row,
Okay.
sort of.
Okay. There was some confusion over the zoning person that was hired in terms of the hours that they had been working and I'm gonna say it this way. The way it was always expressed to me was 5 hours a week. That's how I anticipated this was going to be done. In conversations with Councilman Keating, as the chair of the building department, the answer was, well, we've allocated $7,000 a year for this position. So if they need to work more hours in the summertime, as long as they don't exceed that $7,000 ceiling, then it really doesn't matter how many hours a week they work.
I just want to make sure.
No, it was naturally a confusion, but the suggestion was that there's gonna be way more hours in April through October than there will be in November through March. And so, I think we were concerned because the first week, the individual worked, I think, 10 hours or something like that. And it was like, okay, where are we going with this? So, good question to ask. I think it's been answered. I think we need to
So it's
monitor, we need to monitor the budget and make sure that, as we approach that number, that we don't exceed it, or that we have a good reason why we are exceeding it. But, I think that answers that question at the moment. I'm not aware that the individual has done any building inspections. I don't think that's happened. But I know that, again, Councilman Canton has been in touch with Dave Hosevar, and with Ruth, and that they're managing the process at this point. So I can report on that. New hire process.
I was recently asked by somebody, so the village's hiring process, so you know, the chief thanked you guys for everything. I think it works good with one person from each committee, because then we don't have to sunshine it, and it's much easier. But when, as far as pre-employment testing, we used to do.
We can't have separate.
Your carbona's open, it's right now.
Oh, yes, thank you. Do you mind if I do?
No, step on.
Okay, I'll be right back.
No, take your time.
Go slow, you know, you do call, it's not ready to get.
Thank you, guys.
That cannot be good.
Warning your councilman is
It's
not.
a law, right?
Yep.
And then you have, I think, utilities, right?
Utilities, yep, Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Okay, so, yeah, having an active HR committee is a good thing.
Mhm.
And having it interface with the other committees is a good thing. Now, you know, we didn't need 4 members of council in an interview for a police officer. That was kind of overkill. Because we also had the mayor. So, but arranging it like when Ruth went, so she represented HR and Jerry was there for safety, and so the 2 of them and the mayor's there, that's great, but that's plenty.
Yeah.
So, but having an active HR committee obviously brings up good issues. And we can ask questions of,
Did you look at it from HR, they look at it from safety, and everybody
right,
gets
and, well, and we can talk to the police chief or the mayor or to you or to the department chairs and say, you know, what are we doing? You know, and where are we going? So,
So for that process, so the process in there, so we have, especially for the police department, they're different, right? Because theirs is kind of by state, they have to have certain pre-employment testing done. But in the past, in the village, we always do drug tests because we have drug-free safety policies, so that's mandatory for before anybody's hired. But we used to sometimes do psychological testing, and in the past it was done for everybody, and in recent years, it's sometimes done, sometimes not done. So I went back and looked, so in the police department, it's always done. In the building department, when we hired Ruth had it, but then when we hired, that in the service department, we did.
So who administers certain
We could have a person that we, you know, we send them someplace to get the testing done.
tests?
I had to have one before I started.
Really?
Mhm.
I think that the first place to do psych testing would be at schools, but that's had it so long. Maybe you do.
So I guess just, you know, because in our handbook it says, pre-employment testing, physical for police, and then the other skills, psychological stuff for all new hire. So I guess I just, I kind of want, right, should all be getting it or not getting it? Because I don't know how you can say this
I don't
about
know,
this.
are we qualified to make that decision? I need some guidance here.
I know you can't pick and choose who you're doing it for, right? You kind of gotta go one.
Well,
or the other, right?
you can have requirements based upon the job description. Okay, so, you know, and clearly the police department has requirements
Right, there's.
based upon, because it's state mandated.
Right.
Okay, so they have a set of rules now. we can choose that, department heads need to have certain testing versus, just regular employees. I don't know. But there should be a consistency, and we should sit here and say, well, okay, if it's a building department, or I'm sorry, if it's a service department employee, they're required to have X, which may be different than a building department person or a administrative person. I could certainly see that a service department individual, you might want to do an exoskeleton test to decide if they're physically capable of.
Physical than.
It's a more physical job.
And for an office administrator, because we've had people, I know Excel inside and out, and then they start, and it's like, oh, can you help me a little bit? You know what I mean? So it's like they're doing all do testing,
Yeah.
And I guess this is just.
So that's not, that would be psych, that'd be more,
Skill level.
skill level, yeah.
But not be psychological, but those are other things to think about.
Yeah,
And there are challenges to psychological evaluations, okay? They're standardized tests, which may or may not reveal issues that you would have a concern with. So I know a lot of employers who have given up on it because it didn't prove to be meaningful. But I know other employers that have said, if we do it with everybody, standardized.
Well, I can talk to the chief, because I did ask him the other day about it, and he said he did find a new thing, like he used to send them out somewhere, but he found something new that, I don't know, he gets the test, they come to his office, they do whatever, and then he sends this. I don't know, and it was much, much cheaper, so I just didn't know if that was something to think about,
Well, okay, so I think what we really need to do is sit down in a job description thought process and say, what are the tests that we would, we're going to interview someone and we're going to ask them to do financial issues. What is the testing for that? Can they really do a bank reconciliation? Can they really do Excel or what have you? This also might be a situation where an HR consultant can help us to identify categories.
and if you send somebody for a psyche round and didn't pass, are you liable?
Well, you do it before, so we had some in the past over the years, like we sent them, and it was recommended by the do not hire.
And does the potential employee know this, or
Well, it's a public record, so they're, they can request. a
I would refer immediately to an HR person? This sounds like getting in the muck.
Well, yeah, there's liability. Why didn't you hire me? Oh, because it was recommended based on the psyche valve. What? No. Yeah, these are tough issues in today's world. So I would say, as part of the HR consultants, we need to have a review of the hiring process and with specific recommendations for testing. Something as simple as drug testing now is an issue.
It is.
Oh, sure.
See, have to do that across the board.
Well, but, okay, so what if they come back and they test positive for marijuana? Higher or not higher?
Our policies know it's not a approved substance.
Okay, but, you know,
Most of the kids are.
it has been approved for recreational use. We have medical marijuana, you know. What if somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got a medical card that says, CBD oil has been prescribed for me or whatever, and that's why I tested positive. Okay, is that all right?
No. Not according to our policy,
Okay, well,
So just our particular policy or state?
because it's still federally not approved, so it's not approved. We do have a policy, and because you pick up, the BWC is offering some grants and stuff, and one of them is if we get our drug-free policy reviewed, we could submit that for reimbursement, but, I don't want to get all the details on that. And then, but someone like this, Mr. Gavin, for Clemens Dawson, would be able to review that, but, so it's something I'm looking into, to see if our policy, but I get trained every year because I'm responsible to make sure everybody gets trained, so right now it's federally not approved, so it's not approved.
So how do they let this go in the states where they're selling it? Like, how is that? If it's a federal thing.
it's an absolute conflict of law, and they don't have any answers for it yet.
No, there couldn't be.
So,
But that's why every new employee, before they start, they do the policy, and they have to review it and sign off with it, and you can understand that that's unacceptable.
It's not worth, wasting time on it with the kids at school, they come into my office and say, it's not a big deal, so everybody's doing it.
But the other thing, I was in Colorado, and I did it 2 weeks ago, and I came up, it's still in my system,
Yeah.
according to our policy, it's in your
But
system.
I did say, alcohol has X levels, the proof is, and this, there's no levels.
Right.
Marijuana is different marijuana than it was 50 years ago.
mhm.
And you send a kid home with a dad, it smells like a skunk, because he's been used. So I said, no, there's no standardization. So,
Okay, I think we add this to the list of the HR consultants. And we'll defer that at the moment. Anything else on the agenda today?
That's all I'm doing.
Ms. Kavanaugh.
I'm just looking at this.
Yeah.
No, that looks good.
Okay. Then without objection, at 12:28, I move to adjourn the HR meeting. So I'll tell you the quick story, because this is a good one from a legal standpoint.
Are you turned on?